Many years ago, just around the time XSEED was starting, I met a person who wanted to launch a school. So I asked him, he was not in education. So I asked him, why are you starting a school? And without blinking an eyelid, he told me, because I want to be famous. I was expecting many answers, but not this. I was taken aback and I said, surely there must be other ways to be famous. Why start a school? And he said, if I do my job right, the children will grow up to be people who point to me as the reason for their success. His clarity was breathtaking. But the question I want to ask is, do all of us in education and schools have the same clarity? COVID has changed many things for education, as we heard today, but the relationship between student success and an institution's success remains the same. The test prep companies and the tuition wallas recognized this years ago, and maybe that's one of the reasons for their commercial success. Premier colleges, the Harvards, the IITs, the IIMs are recognized as elite because of the success of their alumni. In fact, my view is the greatest achievement of the IITs is running a fair JEE for the last 50 years. They take in Arabian race horses and Arabian race horses pass out. Okay, that's good. But the real hard work is done by schools and parents who start with children at the very beginning, irrespective of their talents, and then work for years and years to get them to a place where they become an Imja or a Jairam or an Ashrita, the glorious young people you met today. Today's conference is about reclaiming the importance of this hard work. This success was not in an instant. One of my favorite quotes is Lionel Messi, the superstar footballer, supposedly said, "It took me 17 years and 114 days to become an overnight success." There is no such thing as overnight success. Over the past decade, I have visited many schools that are supposedly overnight successes. And I've met many people like Sashi and Gulmeet ma'am and Abhilash who built good schools with vision and force. I've known them for a long time. I say this honestly to you, as the founder of XSEED, I have to pinch myself that today, 10 years later, we have over 100 schools who have stayed with us the journey from day one. COVID or no COVID, free hardware or no free hardware, government regulation or no government regulation, they have stayed with XSEED. The reason is XSEED helps children succeed. And that's how the schools benefit and succeed too. We are indebted to these schools and thousands more for their trust and commitment and for what we've learned from them. Today, I may name a few of them when I speak, but I reach out to all of you for what you've given us. I personally have learned a lot as a result along the way. And based on these learnings from the last decade, I want to lay out today 6 building blocks for education that sets up schools and students for success and propose a charter for quality education. I will focus on the why of these 6, which I think is very important. The primary context of my remarks is K-8 or elementary education, but many of these are applicable to education at the broadest level. I will also share some implications for parents and suggest some books to read along the way. First, we must begin with the vision. Nothing good begins without a vision. The schools I have visited have a very strong vision for the kind of child they want emerging from their institution. You heard these 3 leaders talk about wherever you see a quality school with a difference, the person at the top will tell you their point of view. You may not agree with it. The visions may be different. Some may talk about marks, others will talk about discipline, some will talk about tradition and morals, some will talk about extracurricular and well-rounded, and so on. But there's always a vision. XSEED was founded on the vision of fulfilling the child's potential. Many things have changed at XSEED in the last decade, but that has not changed. But today I would like to imbue that vision of fulfillment of potential with some tangibility and practical edge. COVID has been a grim reminder of who knows what life will throw at you. Millions have died. Too many widowed or orphaned. And entire livelihoods have disappeared. In such a situation, we have no choice but to take stock and refocus on what is most important. Philosophers scoff at livelihood as the only purpose of education. And that's true. There is more to education than getting a job and making money. And you must read Dewey and Montessori and Krishnamurti or Paulo Freire if you really want to touch the soul of education. But may I say, the ability to fend for yourself must come first. In doing so, the person emerges, the capabilities emerge, and then if done right, maybe even the soul emerges. Hence, I venture that the first goal of education has to be to make children independent, adults who can think for themselves, act for themselves, and take care of themselves. Such people are lifelong learners. They may not have the answers, but figure them out. They have beliefs based on evidence and experience. They are not gullible and open to changing their mind if the facts ordain. As Aristotle famously said, the mark of an educated mind is to entertain a thought without necessarily accepting it. The most terrible things in history have happened when people have believed things blindly. And the most wonderful things have happened when a single man or woman stakes out alone. Independence first. Everything comes after. I'm not a religious person, but if I was to pray for my own children, my 3 wishes would be, Lord, first let them be independent and be able to take care of themselves, come what may. Second, let them do no harm to others or themselves. And third, I would be happy if they did some good. As safety announcements in the aeroplanes tell you, you cannot help others till you put the mask on yourself. We are so fortunate as educators that actually we can do all 3. Vision first. Vision for an independent child. Next, once we have the vision, we must think of the people. We must think of teachers. You cannot have elementary education without good teachers. You cannot have a good school without good teachers. Select the right teachers. If you're not running the school yourself, you're not an academic person, select the right principal. The nature of human biology, the nature of children, the 18 long years of rearing, the nature of learning, the need for inspiration, need for guidance, need for correction means teachers are essential. Technology cannot replace teachers. Motivation is the unsolved problem in education. Motivation cannot be addressed without teachers. Some of the schools we worked with years ago in the early days and now are named schools. For instance, the Heritage School in Gurgaon or the NH Goyal School in Raipur, the Yenapoya School in Mangalore, just to name a few, work very, very hard on their first batch of teachers. If I was to start a school today, my energy on the first 10 teachers, on finding the first 10 teachers would be exceptional. What would I look for? Commitment to the vision, commitment to children, and commitment to the profession. That's the input teachers must commit to. In my view, commitment trumps passion. Passion is a fire which is necessary. Commitment makes it last. And on the other side, leaders must respect this. Teachers need respect to be able to do their work. Once you have the commitment and respect, you start walking the path of being a role model and hopefully someday an inspiring role model, which is what children need. What sets XSEED apart from many other places is the quality and commitment of its master teachers, or education coaches as we call them. They run a really mean demonstration. They're really good teachers themselves. They work hard 24/7. They really care about schools. If you're interested in hiring, a book I really benefited from years ago, which I read, and nothing to do with teaching actually, it's actually on how to hire software engineers, called Smart and Gets Things Done by Joel Spolsky. It says two things which I've not forgotten. Hiring is not about selection. Hiring is about elimination. And hiring is about finding the guy who is not looking for a job. The hottest talent is not looking for a job. How do you find teachers who are not looking for jobs? How do you find principals who are not looking for a job? Why do I put the teachers so high in the batting order? Why are they first on my list after the vision? Because as Jim Collins says, he's a management guru who wrote that book, Good to Great. Before you take the bus anywhere, first put the right people on the bus. Otherwise, that bus is not going far. To the parents out there, my suggestion would be, I know you look at the brand name of the school, I know you meet the principal, I know you look at the infrastructure, but one request, meet 3 teachers as well. You will know what blood flows in the veins in the corridors of marble or Rajasthan stone or whatever else they use. You need to know what blood flows in the school. So first, vision, and second, teachers. Third, vision will go bust if you don't have the know-how. The flight of a plane is determined by the ATC or the air traffic control system. Similarly, the flight path of a school is determined by the learning system in the school. There was a time when textbooks were the system. That's over. Many people, including parents and school owners, think that board is the system. The board determines the topics of study. And to be honest, nowadays, the board is often just a brand. It's not a learning system. The learning system or the pedagogy of a school is the one that determines how children engage with the subject matter day in, day out, in every period, every class. What plan does a teacher follow? What resources should I use? How are the kids treated? What is expected from them? How are they assessed? For decades, the system was what I would call the triple T system, or TTT, telling, textbooks, and tests. That is no longer adequate. It creates experts on the past, not on the future. It creates followers of the book, not independent thinkers like we spoke of. And it assumes that knowledge is power. The time for that is gone. Google is God if knowledge is power. Our work begins after that. What's needed is a solid education based on experience and trial and error, as some of our academic experts said. It must have reflection. It must have dialogue. How did Ashrita learn about diaphragms or Jairam about solubility? That is inspiring and unforgettable. That's what we need every day in every classroom. Inspiration and experience are not enough. This must be followed by rigorous practice, by timely assessment and feedback on how you're doing. This assessment must not be on memorization alone, but on skills. This is a big thing, this learning system thing. So you can make a timetable. Timetable is easy. What you put in the timetable is the tough part. People have copied the idea of XSEED in the last few years. But that's like copying, making a drawing of a tree. It's not the same as the living tree itself. The real thing is hard to mimic because it has multiple aspects. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And the reason we have customers who've stayed with us for 10 years and others don't is exactly this. This is a living tree of knowledge. Without a living know-how system that is constantly updating itself, a school is just a set of routines. These routines, do they translate into learning or becoming an independent person? Who knows? I spoke of vision, I spoke of teachers and people, and I spoke about the importance of a learning system. No system will survive for long without technology. This conference is happening on this platform today. For the previous decade, it was a live conference happening in hotels and conference rooms. The world has indeed changed. Not only will systems not survive, I will go a step further to say systems cannot be effectively implemented without technology, cannot be updated in absence of technology, and actually risk being subverted if technology is not regulating it. You will achieve the opposite of what you want to achieve. Thank God for blockchain. And look what COVID has taught us, that only the technological survive. Everybody has suffered, but tech companies have thrived. I keep referring to COVID, and that might be a bit annoying, but it's a blatant reminder of how reality works and what does not. I'm taking the risk of quoting Nassim Taleb, which is always a somewhat dangerous endeavor. He's the author of Anti-Fragile, a famous book, his second best book, I think, after Black Swan. And I would say that appropriate technology in a school and in institutions give them a dose of anti-fragility. Once you have online education going in your school, and say your competitor schools don't, even if COVID rages, God forbid, you actually do better. You're stronger. You're anti-fragile. It's crazy. One of the best writings on technology and education were by the Harvard guru. Unfortunately, he's no more, Clayton Christensen, for those of you who follow him. Fantastic book written over a decade ago called Disrupting Class, in which he predicted 10 years ago that in 10 years, 50% of classrooms all around the world will be computer-based online education. Which sounded crazy then, but look what COVID did. 100% of classrooms everywhere are using technology, otherwise they wouldn't have survived. He says that technology, and especially disruptive work, takes time. XSEED has taken time. But once it goes up the S curve, once this new type of school you're trying to launch, it will explode. Apart from this phenomena, technology is a powerful empowerment tool. It reaches students who cannot be reached. It enables teachers who may be having a hard time. I'll give you a very simple example of a study that has been quoted a lot. Quiet children, or the more introverted children, so to speak, who do not raise their hands in the class or participate more. Chat rooms and online instruction has actually included them a lot more. I've seen that for myself when I teach. It has made the process far more democratic. To pick another example, teachers who have responsibilities at home, come from homes where they're expected to do a lot, take care of kids, take care of the house, and so on. The Super Teacher app, 24/7, in your hand, you can work on it when you want, you have the flexibility, gives enormous power to this person. My thoughts on technology would not be complete if I didn't speak about measurement and data. You cannot change what you don't measure, as Peter Drucker reminded us many years ago. And with technology, it becomes so much easier. In real time, I'm seeing your responses. I can see audience engagement. I can see poll scores. It's the same with grades in the classroom. It makes a huge difference and keeps us focused on the ball. If our goal is critical thinking, independence, then we measure that and see how we are doing. So those are some brief thoughts on technology. Just want to remind you, did you hear the word hardware? Did you hear the word LMS or ERP or any other 3 or 4 or 5 letter words? No. Because once you know the why of what you're looking for, you won't get misled by fads and fashions. So my 2 bits would be, when it comes to technology, invest in knowing why you are using it. The 5th area, and this may surprise some of you, I would say, is communication. Earlier today in my speech, I spoke about part of being an independent thinker is occasionally changing your mind. This is one area where I have changed my mind. When I came back to India and started my work in education, my viewpoint was that you need to keep doing your work, and sooner or later, if it's quality, customers will recognize it, and people will recognize it, and society will recognize it. In my previous life, long ago, I was a marketing person working in Paris for big shot multinational companies. But when I came here, I became devoted to teaching, learning, classroom, product, and all that kind of stuff, and perhaps neglected the other part. However, after all these years, I've realized that if you're doing something different, you have a duty to communicate powerfully, especially on why you're doing what you're doing. Human beings don't like change that much. All of us like comfort. Change means a feeling of insecurity. And think of it like this, comes to your children, you don't want that feeling of insecurity. Which is why some of the most bold and brash parents will make the most conservative choices for their children. Makes sense. But it only makes sense if the future is going to be like the past. But there's so much evidence that the future is not going to be like the past. So it's the job of progressive schools and leaders to speak out, to communicate in a way and a voice that their good intentions are understood by the community. We must enroll them to our mission. Often teachers have a very powerful role in this because parents have the ear of teachers. So the teacher is convinced, our parents will listen to them. A tool like XSEED Universal, you heard Nick and Anjit talk about. The intention is not to come up with some other dazzling piece of technology. It has a very solid purpose to have powerful communication channel with the parent community, for teachers, for school leaders. Communication is the lifeblood. There's a reason grandmother's tales are passed on, and that's how legends go from generation to generation. I think it's a good time to remind ourselves. The sixth element, space. Physical space is essential. And many people who have been hearing me in the last few minutes and who believe that the main thing about having a school is having a building and infrastructure before anything else must be wondering, why have I taken so long to talk about space or infrastructure? It has come here in the sequence because we were talking about other important matters first. What good is a church or a temple or a mosque if there's no faith? You need the faith first. Space is essential. And once again, COVID has reminded us that it's a luxury, and those who have it should treasure it, and those who don't are seriously disadvantaged. Learning needs suitable space. Not having that space at home that's quiet, private, comfortable for children is a serious competitive disadvantage. Yet we know so many who overcome it with great will, and I salute those children. Schools too. Look, if you have the resources, if you have the money, and you have that scale of classrooms, labs, playgrounds, auditoriums, swimming pools, horse riding, whatever you like. But you know what? Sometimes you can have magic in a school even without those things. And sometimes you could have all those things and no magic. The institution feels like a piece of infrastructure, not as a place of learning. A couple of things I want to mention about space, which I have been touched by as I've worked to different schools. One is making the space about children. The work of children displayed everywhere. Spaces for children. It's okay if there's a little bit of noise. It's okay if there's a little bit of freedom. How do you design it so that silent work can happen and yet there can be expression and fun? From many years ago, I remember my visit to the Riverside School in Ahmedabad, if some of you have heard of it or know it. Fabulous job in a relatively small space. Another thing is use of greenery. One of our XSEED schools, which I went to a few years ago, Uttam Schools, girls' school in Ghaziabad area, very crowded metropolitan area. But the moment you enter the school, the greenery just kind of seduces you, calms you down, takes over. I've noticed this in the Philippines as well, where many schools, the private schools tend to be smaller, but they use greenery. There'll be a patch of garden, which brings it to space, makes it a space which you want to be in for a while. Finally, I must say, space is made by culture. Culture is made by people. What is culture? Culture is what people do when nobody's looking. A great place just has a smell of a different kind. And leaders, you can usually tell where that smell is coming from. So as I was speaking, you saw the XSEED charter just came up here next to me. That is the XSEED charter. with those 6 promises we are making to ourselves today. Let the child become an independent person, ready for life. The teacher is a caring and committed professional. A learning system of experience, reflection, rigor, and excellence. All those things, very important. Technology that focuses, enables, and empowers everyone. Communication, very important. That enrolls the community to action so that we are not complaining about them. And finally, a space to nourish the mind, body, and hopefully the spirit. Feel free to take a picture of that. We'll, of course, be sharing that, and it'll be great to hear from you if that inspires you, works for you, your feedback on it. Finally, I want to say that I look forward to this wonderful journey we are going to have together. Let's not rest till we achieve the success we seek. As Churchill said, success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. We are not losing our enthusiasm. Look forward to your questions. Thank you so much for listening to me.